Chapter 53. Layla slashed out wildly with her sword and backed away from the Elmes, her vision confused by the hundreds of shadows cast by the light of the raging fire. Every shadow melded into a dark one, lurching forward and backward, cutting at her thigh, her side, her forearm, and each cut sliced deeper than the last. They toyed with her. She protected her stomach and face with her feral swings, but it would be only a matter of time before one of them chose to end the fight. Pain erupted in her back, and she twisted to swing at the moving shadow. Her blade hit nothing, but the momentum of her swing forced her to step forward, and the toe of her boot caught a root. She stumbled, trying desperately to stay on her feet. Light flashed as lightning struck in the distance, illuminating a man before her just as he brought down his blade. She raised her sword in time, but blocking the blow exposed the rest of her body. Pain erupted in her calf, and she screamed, throwing herself backward onto the ground. But they were fighting on a hill, and when she hit the ground, she began to roll downward uncontrollably. Seconds later, the trunk of a tree stopped her. Her head cracked against its trunk, and the world went black all around the edges of her vision. But whether by some mercy or some evil, she stayed awake. She had rolled a bow shot from the white fire burning out of control, the bitter air especially cold against her blood-soaked skin. Inej was alive, miraculously, a silhouette before the light of the flames. Poor Ulian. He'd be dead by now. She hadn't seen the Meifa since the fight began, except for one glimpse of him charging the Yelmes, knife in hand. 4 Yelmes approached her now, moving cautiously down the steep hill. They flanked outward and approached with far more caution than needed. They acted as though they feared her. She wanted to stand and keep fighting, but nothing was left in her. Whatever strength she had once possessed had been drained, poured out into the pool of blood she could feel running down her back and beneath her. Feeling ebbed from her fingers and toes. So she watched the Yelmes approach, 4 shadows descending toward her. If not for the red lights around their hands, Layla doubted she would have kept track of them. They would kill her, but she had known that when she had chosen to stay and fight. At least she hadn't abandoned Inej. She had given to him what he'd given to her, a life and for a life. Maybe Deus would call her brave. Maybe he would let her enter through the doors of Paradisios. Would she see her father again? Would she find her mother already there? The Yelmes were close now. The lights in their hands burned brighter, more vibrant and alive than before. And she thought now that she could make out the lights of yellow moving through their bodies. They looked majestic and holy. They looked like gods. Layla wanted to say something, to ask them why they glowed, but her mouth wouldn't work. In fact, nothing worked. She didn't hurt anymore, but neither did her hands or legs respond to her mind's commands. She accepted that. It would make receiving death that much easier. But then, when the Yelmes were nearly close enough to strike her, her hand moved of its own volition. It jerked upward, her fingers contorting so they spread unnaturally wide. The Yelmes paused for a heartbeat, and then one charged forward with his sword raised. Layla watched her hand close into a fist, then move downward as though pulling a heavy rope. All the yellow lights before her went out, and the 4 Yelmes collapsed as though they had been merely black sacks of cloth. Mind reeling, Layla wasn't sure what to do, didn't know what she could do. Her body still would not respond to her, and it seemed as though it were not finished. Her other hand raised, one finger pointing up the hill toward the fire and to the swarm of Yelmes around the Velk. Her hand repeated the motion again, fingers spreading wide, then clenching to a fist which yanked downward, and all the Yelmes collapsed. To Layla, it looked like faint stars going out in the distance. She watched Inej go still and saw his shoulders shift from side to side as he tried to understand what had happened. Her hand fell limp to her side, and Layla felt blood pooling in her mouth. Inej screamed her name for a while before he found her. Layla had listened and watched as he'd searched by the firelight, but she'd been unable to wave or even say a word, drained of all but the faintest thoughts. It was a miracle sleep hadn't come, or a curse. She wasn't sure which. Vaguely, she understood that she had stopped bleeding, which shouldn't have been possible, but nothing should have been possible anymore, and yet everything seemed to happen anyway. Eventually, Inej spotted her. He snapped branches as he closed the distance to her. "Layla, are you alive, lass?" Inej knelt beside her, his rough hand feeling her head and cheek, carefully looking over her wounds. She could feel his hands, which felt like a good sign, but still, she could not move or answer. "We gotta go. I can lift you, but Ool, he's up there too, and can you hear me?" Inej leaned closer, feeling at her forehead and looking into her eyes. A moment later, his blue eye widened. "Oi, I should have seen this coming. Oh, you poor thing. Your brother saved us, I guess, but he possessed you to do it, and that's hard to shake. You ain't gonna be moving for a bit." Inej looked around, taking in the dead Yelmez and then looking up at the spreading flames. "All right, then. Let me get the barkeep."